Hello, everyone. Welcome into episode 111 of the Stomp the Bus Show. I'm your host, Mark Harris, alongside Colton Dodgson. And there's a lot to talk about tonight, Colton. We have a football team that is always generating news, ranked seventh in the final AP poll today. Men's basketball is on a roller coaster, and hockey just keeps on winning. So there's a lot going on. How's it going, man? I see you're wearing your Birds hat.
Yes, sir. Nervous wreck will be for the next couple of days. It just if you had no idea what happened on Sunday between the Eagles and the Rams, I think you would be shocked that the Eagles actually won that game the way that people are talking about them. But hey, that's how they like it, man. Hungry dogs run faster, right? 6-point favorites are underdogs. No, that's insufferable. We're obviously heavy favorites. Should win the game, but I won't be sleeping very much. I will tell you this, Mark. I had a vivid dream last night that they lost the game, and I
Okay.
woke up. I woke up furious. I had to get up. Like I felt. I'm.
I get
It
that.
was so. It felt so real. Like it felt like I had just lived it. Like I had just watched the game and they lost. As real as Sunday, and had to go do my job because I'm a professional. Um, with the weight of this fake loss on my shoulders. I don't know if that's a good thing. I don't
It's
know if
really
that's a
rough.
bad thing. But I will end with
I don't
this.
I, I
This
don't know
is
how
this
you
is
could. I don't know how anyone could pull a day in your shoes, Colton.
I
Honestly,
know. I'm a grinder through and through.
rough out there.
Um but I will end my Eagles talk with this. I keep hanging my hat on the fact that this year the Super Bowl is February 9th. Saquon Barkley, born on February 9th. Cooper DeJean, born on February 9th. And
Okay,
most importantly, Mark, stay with me. Colton Dodson, born on February 9th.
there we go. Happy almost
So
birthday,
I got that going for me, which is nice.
dude.
All
It's you're
right.
speaking it into existence.
I'm
So
trying. I'm
yeah,
manifesting. After that game on Sunday, man, it felt like there was a little bit of destiny. That Nakua catch, I thought was our season. So,
that it was. Yeah, it, don't give Matt Stafford any time because he will use it.
well, don't give Jalen Carter any Matthew Staffords, Mark.
There you
There's
go.
It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah. Anyway, this is an ASU podcast after all. The Sun Devils men's
Oh, is
basketball
it?
team. That's what we try to do.
Oh, okay.
I think we've done
Right,
a
right,
pretty
right.
good job sticking to it, other than when we're
No, it's
diving
solid.
into.
It's like a top 20 podcast for me, I think. Something like that.
That's all we've ever been going for, man. Just getting the top 25.
There you go.
And speaking of the top 25, your Arizona State Sun Devils defeated number 23 West Virginia 65-57 on Tuesday night in Morgantown. Late night game for the Mountaineer fans. Not the prettiest watch, but I don't know. Is that the most impressive performance from ASU men's basketball this year? I mean,
I mean,
they
how is
they
it
held it
not?
they held it like a 10-point lead for most of this second half. You
Yeah,
know,
the defense was obviously incredible, right?
yeah,
A lot of people involved. I know Quaintance had 17 points, 12 rebounds.
so good.
Bashir Jihad led the team in scoring with 17. Or I guess tied for the lead in scoring. But I think the defense is what stood out. Obviously, I mean West Virginia was playing real solid defense in that game too. 65-57 is a pretty low total, um, given where college basketball is this year, and given the fact that ASU just played in a 95-89 game on January 14th, a week prior to this West Virginia game. So encouraging on the defense. But I was telling you before we started recording that this is like I think we were excited in the offseason because of the additions of Quaintance, and you had the transfer or Quaintance and Josan Sannon, who hasn't played in a while. But we were excited about those additions, and then we were excited about the transfers, right? You've got BJ Freeman, Alston Mason, Bashir Jihad, all of those guys, while retaining guys like Adam Miller and Sean Phil. It seemed like Bobby Hurley was about to have the best roster that he's had in his time at ASU. But it's disheartening that the exact same trends are starting. This is when they start to surface a little bit, right? If you go back historically and look at, I looked back at 22, 23, the last time they made the tournament and actually won a first four game, almost won a first round game. You had, 4 straight wins and then 4 straight losses and then a win and then a loss. And the season, end the season 1-2, right? And then you beat USC to just barely make it into the field. And I think this team, and you can look at this now and identify that this is kind of a trend with Bobby Hurley coach teams, right? We've been talking about this for years now.
Yeah.
They're just so streaky. You can't that example I pointed out earlier, the UCF versus the West Virginia game. It's like you don't ever know what you're going to get with this team. And granted, dude on UCF, his name escapes me. I'm looking right now. The kid who dropped 40. Right. You can't really plan for something like that, right? The kid comes out, drops 40 points. Obviously, you lose 95-89 in a game that you probably could have taken. I think they had a 3 or 4 point lead late in that game and then just kind of fell apart. But I guess the issue here is this is going to kind of sound like a contradiction, but the streaky nature of these teams and the consistency with which they are streaky year after year. Does that make sense?
Yes. No, I totally agree.
Okay. So that's my biggest issue, and it's something we're continuing to see with these Bobby Hurley led teams. Man, it's like 4 straight losses stemming from Kansas to Cincinnati. Cincinnati game was another one, and I was telling you before the show,
that was ugly.
Full
That was such an ugly game.
Yeah, and I mean they kind of made it close there at the end, and then it ended up the way it did. But I was telling you before the game too. Full disclosure, I didn't even watch the West Virginia game. I couldn't bring myself to do it. Right? Like it's too disheartening to watch this team and recognize the talent. Obviously, Joseph Sannon didn't play. He's been dealing with that ankle injury. Yeah. That's unfortunate, right? Maybe the team looks a little different offensively if he's playing, but it's really, really hard to tune in and watch this team play when it's just same old, right? When they went and won that, I can't believe I'm forgetting the name of such an illustrious tournament. The tournament, whatever it was that they won earlier in the season, where they beat
it was like the Acrisure
Cal Poly,
Classic.
New Mexico. Yeah, Acrisure. Thank you. Where they beat Cal Poly in New Mexico and St. Mary's, and we're like, oh, okay. And then they get dismantled by Florida, and that was kind of like, okay, now they've gone 3-6 if you include the West Virginia game over their last 9 games, and they're 2-5 in the conference. Big 12, really strong basketball conference, but we should have the team to at least compete. I don't necessarily know if the West Virginia game is a sign of things to come. And if it is, only enjoy about 2 or 3 wins. You're probably not going to beat Iowa State. So let's just move past that. But maybe you beat Colorado, Arizona rivalry game. Who knows? Kansas State. There's
wins left on this schedule.
100% there's wins left on this schedule. But there were wins that could be had against UCF. They took Baylor to overtime after starting super slow. So you never know what you're going to get out of this team. They will win a couple more games, obviously. Will they make the tournament? Probably not, barring in a miraculous Big 12 tournament run.
I'm not ready to sell their tournament chances just yet. I mean, honestly, I think this is a big win. Like, this was a huge fulcrum win. Like, I would be much more down on the tournament chances, before this game started, to be honest, because.
And that's fair.
This is a win that, like, literally, it was a season-altering win, just because of because you had 4 straight losses before. Because this is a quad 1 win of all, like, you're on the road against a ranked team, right? Like, that's gonna hold up, and
it will hold up if
to have as good of a record in the Big 12. Like, if we have 13 games left, and this is before the tournament. If we go let's say we go 8-5. That means you finish 19-12. In the Pac-12, that would not be like.
If they finish 8-5, they will absolutely make the tournament. That I
Yeah,
agree with. I don't see,
you just don't see it
and
happening.
maybe I'm just too pessimistic,
No,
but
no, no, I'm sorry, 8 and
I
5 from this point forward, not.
no, totally.
Okay,
I hear you there over their last
yeah.
13 games, absolutely. But my thing is that, man, and this was a huge win. I would be psyched if it looked like, oh, okay, maybe they'll build on this. But you've got number 3 Iowa State coming up next, right?
For
And
whatever reason, I feel like ASU has a chance to win that game. I don't know why.
okay.
I think that
And
I think
if
that
they do win that game, I will completely change my tune.
well, no,
But
Colton, here's the thing. I think they could win that game and still have down stretches later in the year anyway. I think it's just
yeah,
I think what we have seen, and I think this game kind of it's funny because I like you, like I was very unexcited going into this game last night. Like 4 straight. The Cincinnati loss might have been the worst one. It was
yeah,
ugly. In the UCF game, at least your offense played well, and it kind of had a freak element to it with the guy scoring 40. The Baylor
right.
game, like I was there, it wasn't pretty, but and you
They
missed some
fought in
big,
that game. That
yeah,
was
you missed some
impressive.
big free throws down the stretch, but you did force it to overtime. That and,
They
and that
missed
was a
free throws
game.
against UCF too, now that you mention it. That
Yeah,
game was brutal.
I wasn't able to watch the UCF game, but the Baylor game, like that was a game where three quarters of the game, like the first 30 minutes of the game, you would not feel good about the team
Oh,
at
yeah.
all. It was
They
ugly.
scored like 2 points in the first 5 minutes or
Yeah, it
something,
was
right?
gross. It was
Yeah.
so like that's even the theme with this year's team is like there is I think what we've seen is like this is a typical Bobby Hurley team. It's just there is more talent there, like it's clear, and
Mhm.
so that
And
might
that
just be,
overcompensates sometimes, right?
yeah, it does
Yeah.
exactly like so, and also just like ASU won this game, but West Virginia also contributed to ASU winning in a big. I mean, they shot 4 of 29 from 3, like,
Right.
and not
Like
all of like
57
there were a lot
points,
of
and you
open
can't chalk
shots
all
too.
of that up to
No,
ASU's defense.
no, exactly. And
But
I think some of it is just like I don't know, like it's just evening out over time. And
variance, is that kind
so
of what you're thinking? Like
yeah,
variance
exactly.
across okay. All right.
So I just this is a weird team, because that like the 4-game losing streak. I mean, the Kansas second half was terrible. Um, Baylor and UCF, you kind of could have won. The Cincinnati game, it never really felt like you were nominally close, but it didn't really feel like you were ever going to win. So now, I mean, I was very surprised watching this game. Like it was just a big performance, and I mean, Quaintance, my God, man, like
Yeah.
this
He's a
dude is
monster.
incredible. And after watching the game last night, like, because there have been, some of the Bobby Hurley hot seat stuff heated up after the Cincinnati loss. Like that was very present on social media. I saw PHNX touched on it, and they're fairly like they want ASU to win. Like they're not going to be the first to lead the charge on the Bobby Hurley hot seat talk, and for obvious reasons. I think we talked about it last year, but it was there for a reason because that's how like uninspiring it looked, and it's a lot of the same stuff. And so that is the ultimate problem with this team is like this team should be going to the tournament no matter what.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And
They have the talent of a tournament team for
yes,
sure.
they
Absolutely.
100% do.
Yeah.
They've had some injury, bad luck as well. That has to be acknowledged. But if they do make the tournament, it's not going to be a smooth ride to get there. And that's
Right.
the thing that we're all annoyed by is like maybe we do like, and also the other thing is like being in the Big 12, the margin for error is higher, is greater
That's
than the Pac-12. We
but
just
there's
have
a reason for
because,
that
and also
because
none of these losses that we've suffered are like, it's not like if you lose to Cal in the Pac-12 or some of these Oregon State teams or whatever it is, like you losing to like UCF is a good team. Baylor is a good team. Cincinnati, like on the road, that's not a horrible loss. Kansas, so like, and the two non-con losses we have. So we haven't stubbed our toe. And it's
I think the
frustrating.
most
You still see the giant
frustrating.
scoring droughts within
Yeah.
games.
No,
That's what's,
totally.
and you saw it
There
last night too. Like even in games you win.
there is no in watching this team play. Anytime you watch this team play, you recognize that from an observer's point of view, right? Take that with what it is. Maybe take it with a grain of salt. But it doesn't look like there is any offensive philosophy for this team other than let the stars be great. And if that doesn't work, then we're not going to do a whole lot. Right?
Yeah,
Like that's how it feels watching the team. Sometimes there's a little bit of a flow,
so last
but
night last
it's
night it
not
didn't feel
sustained.
so. I feel like it pops up differently, is what I would say.
Okay.
So I didn't watch the UCF game. I was busy, but if you score 89 points, like there has to be some type of flow established.
But that was another game, but that's perfect. That's the point I'm trying to make
Yeah.
is I watched that whole game start to finish. There may have been some business motivations there. I can't confirm or deny.
Oh,
But
yeah,
I
the
watched
over.
that. No, nope. I can't disclose what I had, but I went to sleep upset. Um, I watched that game from start to finish, and that was a game where his name is escaping me. I want to look it up. The UCF guy who dropped 40. If you can find that, that would be a huge help. But the BJ Freeman was the reason they stayed in that game. That dude was
Yeah.
unconscious.
No,
Not
he's been
BJ
so
Freeman,
good in conference play.
but the dude from
He is.
UCF. He dropped
Yeah.
BJ Freeman dropped 26 in that game, which is a huge number for a college basketball game and probably would have been
Right.
extremely impressive had some dude on the other team not dropped 40 points, right? So that's the point I'm trying to make is if BJ Freeman has an off night in that game, I mean,
Yeah.
Quaintance too. Let's give
Keyshawn
Quaintance
Hall.
credit. There you go. Keyshawn Hall was unreal. I
Quentin's
think
been
he
20.
started 9 of 9 in that game.
Yeah,
He
that
didn't
doesn't
miss
surprise
until the
me.
second half, which is like that's something where if BJ Freeman isn't there to answer, and he answered on a lot of those shots that Hall was knocking
Right.
down. If BJ Freeman isn't there to answer on a lot of those shots, that game is probably ugly, right? So you look at the 89 and you're like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's impressive. But a majority of that was BJ Freeman knocking down open looks. And how much of that is the movement created? How much of that watching it didn't really seem like it was a whole lot, right? It just seemed like UCF was lagging a little bit or missed an assignment or something like that. I felt more like UCF was allowing ASU to stay in it versus ASU was throwing counter punches. And give credit where credit's due. They shot 50% from 3, 50% from the field. Abysmal free throw shooting down the stretch. That's the reason they lost that game.
Right.
But
No, and that's
I
a
mean,
big
if
reason they
you
lost to Baylor too.
the free and it's guys who should be knocking down free throws. It's BJ Freeman, it's Alston Mason, it's the guys who get to the line and you're like, okay, Alston Mason shot 2 of 5 from the free throw line and BJ Freeman 5 of 6, but Freeman missed that one miss was a 4th consecutive miss for ASU down the stretch at the line.
Yeah.
So it was just one of those games where, you look at it and you're like, oh, okay, Quaintance.
Like,
Right,
I don't know how
right.
to.
Quaintance was great too. I want to give Quaintance credit. 5 blocks. That's just, absurd.
Yeah.
He's averaging little over 2 a game. 7 rebounds. It felt like every time UCF was about to pull away, Quaintance got a big rebound. And that's the thing. You can't even take rebounds for granted on this team, man. There's so many times an offensive rebound leads to a backbreaking,
That's happened a lot.
outlet or whatever it is. Yeah. Right. So it's one of those things where even on the nights they drop 90, they're dropping 90 because BJ Freeman is knocking down 5 3-pointers and Alston Mason went 3 for 5. Adam Miller went 3 for 6, right? So but it didn't jump out to me as like, oh, look at Bobby running these sets to get his shooters open. Didn't look like that at all. It looked like UCF missing assignments, or this guy sags a little bit and creates a little bit of room, right? So
Yeah. I guess
that's
I
the
guess like
issue, I think.
yeah. I don't think that the non like I think sometimes the like Bobby Hurley can't run any plays. I think that just gets a little like overblown sometimes. Like sometimes it's just guys missing shots and
Right. Guys have to
guys
hit
not
shots. You're
finishing at the rim.
100% right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like yesterday, against West Virginia, the 65 points doesn't totally show it, but like I thought they like at the end of the game they weren't doing stupid stuff. It was twice Mason feeding it to Quains down low, and like I thought that Hurley had them like I thought it wasn't too much like stupid ISO ball. Whereas
And that's good.
The Cincinnati game was ugly. Like that was not pretty. But I mean, when you get Hurley up against the wall, when you get him in a corner, he responds.
He's like the
So
Mike Tomlin of college basketball.
that
He's
is
gonna
such a good
he's gonna do
current day, yeah,
he's
modern, yeah,
gonna do
current time Mike Tomlin.
just
Yeah.
right. He's gonna do just enough to be like, oh, look what Bobby Hurley's doing at
Yep.
lowly ASU, right?
Yep.
But
And there's times where
my
it looks
thing,
super ugly throughout
right?
this.
But the
Like,
issue now is if you look at
always start
Tomlin
out
and you look at
strong.
if you look at Tomlin and you look at Tomlin's season, the thing is like, oh, he didn't have that great of a roster. Look what he got to the playoffs.
Yeah.
With Bobby Hurley, this might be the most talented roster he's
I
ever
know.
had. And we're seeing a lot of the same things, right?
Yep.
You
It's just
quad
like
one
a
win.
better
Great.
version of it. Yeah.
100%. Quad one win. Excellent. That was a great game. You beat West Virginia by 8 on the road. You were 9-point dogs going into that game, 8.5 rather.
Right.
So you essentially covered their spread or lost by the hook. In any case, big win. Incredible. It really only means something if this game was a sign of maybe they're turning a bit of a corner. Maybe you mentioned
Yeah.
they weren't doing those things at the end of the game that typically, causes them to implode or whatever it is. Is that maturity, or was that like, oh, okay, this was a good night, right? What I'm saying is like, what is the outlier? Was the successful,
Yeah.
or what is this team? What is the identity? And
Yeah.
we'll find that out down the stretch, right? Maybe
Yeah.
this game is the one that we look back at and we're like, oh, okay, they went Mark's projected 8-5. I'm not saying you're projecting it, but I'm saying
Right. Mike
they hit that 8-5 mark down the stretch. They're in the tournament. Look at that West Virginia game. That was the one that really helped them band together. Who knows? I'm looking back at historical stretches with far less talented rosters, and you start to see very similar trends. 3 straight losses to 4 straight wins, followed by 2-3 losses in a row, followed by 3 wins to head into the tournament and win just enough to be playing on, Tuesday or Wednesday. So, but this roster is too good for that. And I think that's my issue.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's just say we don't make the tournament. What, like, do you think they should keep Bobby if because if they make the tournament, like Bobby is going to stay, like no matter what.
100%. It's hard to say because I think what Bobby Hurley's done in this new NIL landscape, which has really been a new era that we've been trying to navigate for
New
what,
format.
3 years?
Yeah.
2 or 3 years, something like that. And I think he's really embraced it based on the roster he's put together this year. And, Jaden Quainton's father even said they've held up their end of the bargain and then some to go out and get Quaintons, who is 17. He can come back. He can't go to the NBA until he finishes one more season, right? So it's an issue. Does he transfer? Who knows, right? Maybe somebody throws money at him that ASU can't match, whatever. That's a problem for another day. I do give Bobby credit for his ability to go out and build the roster that he did. The damning part about all of that is it hasn't changed, at least from what I've seen. It hasn't changed a lot of the issues. And there's a lot of reasons, maybe, right? We're comparing a Pac-12 stretch to a Big 12 stretch, one that featured Kansas on the road, Baylor, but UCF and Cincinnati. If you're in a very difficult conference, which Bobby Hurley has acknowledged multiple times, those are the games you absolutely have to have, I think.
Well, at least one of them. Yeah.
Split them,
Yeah.
especially a game in UCF that was so winnable. Like
Yeah.
they're up by 4 late in that game. And if they're knocking down free throws, if they even hit 2 out of the 4 that they missed, that game might have been a win. Right? So
Right.
it's a lot of the same issues regardless of the talent. And it's like, at what point do you look at it and you're like, okay, we've always kind of given Bobby the pass because of the rosters that he's put together. And he's always kind of done what he could with the talent that he had. But at the end of the day, he did bring in Josh Christopher. He brought in Bagley. He brought in a lot of other talented guys at a certain point. COVID didn't help that, but this is the most talented roster he's had, and you're still seeing the issues that plagued Bobby Hurley teams when they weren't as talented. And that's what scares me a little bit. I don't know. Whenever you get rid of somebody, and I think you've said this at a certain point, so you've hit the nail on the head. Whenever you get rid of somebody like a coach, right? You have to know that there's a better alternative, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
what is the alternative to Bobby? What happens if you move on from Bobby? Like, who is chomping at the bit to come to ASU to coach basketball? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's another thing you have to weigh with that. They've also, I think he got the extension maybe after the tournament run. But at a certain point, it's like you have to be realistic about your goals as a program too, right? Are you realistic about the fact that ASU probably isn't going to ever be a college basketball blue blood, right? You kind of have to be. I don't think that's something that is necessarily attainable. Could they make a run in a tournament here and there? Probably. So, like, if Bobby Hurley's happy here, if there's not an alternative out there that's going to make you think, wow, life would be so much better with this person, I think you have to stick with him, right? We kind of mentioned it. He's done just enough for you to be like, okay, they're competitive. They can go to Morgantown and beat a number 23 West Virginia. They can lead Kansas at half at Allen Fieldhouse, right? They can win the Acrisure Classic.
Take Baylor to overtime.
Exactly. So you have to look. I think Bobby Hurley is a high floor coach, right?
Yeah.
But his ceiling is never going to be the ceiling of what ASU fans, I guess, want it to be. This is kind of what you're going to have, and we have to be okay with that. And you have to hope that maybe the talent leads to a winning streak that spans 5 games instead of 4. Like, that's just going to be life as an ASU basketball fan. So, long story short, I don't see how you fire him. Especially after how long he's been here. You get to the tournament occasionally. Sometimes you even win a first 4 game. So, I don't know how much more you can really ask for. And furthermore, who would be able to deliver on that?
So for me, I'm less interested in like, oh, who could come in, because in my eyes, there's always some younger coach at one of the lower levels that you can roll the dice on, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't,
That's a good point. There are a lot of those guys.
I honestly, in addition to that, I think that one of the biggest positives Bobby Hurley had for keeping his job last year, when, again, let's be honest, at the time, how last year's season ended and just how the season just went throughout it, that team was terrible. It had quit by the end.
Good guys leave the team.
Had Jose Perez leave before the season. I forgot about that. It was just a horrible experience. And in a lot of power, high major schools, Hurley would have been fired. But the biggest reason to keep him last year, in my mind, was, well, the athletic department is unstable. Desert Financial Arena is old and, just behind the times. I wouldn't call it an eyesore, but it's in that realm. And Hurley's advantage was like, yeah, you guys could fire me, but at least with keeping me, at least that I can have some level of competency. And that's what's happened this year. They have some level of competency, right? They're 11-7. They still have a chance to make the tournament, right? Like like everything's ahead of them. Teams
Right.
in conferences like this that have an 11-7 record, at
And I mean,
2/3 of the way through January have made the tournament before. It's not crazy, especially after
yeah.
that win over West Virginia, which would get like we wouldn't be. I would be having a totally different tune had they lost that game, but it was a big win, and it is just like I get why fans want more, because you're right that ASU basketball will never become a blue blood, but there's a lot of teams out there that have made the Final Four once, like,
Totally. Your
it
ceiling, your
yeah,
ceiling in college basketball is inherently much
it's
higher
way
than it
higher.
would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, just looking at this schedule too, and if you cross-reference it with the Big 12 standings, 3 of your next 5 games are against Colorado, Kansas State, and Oklahoma State, right? Like
Yeah,
they're
Colorado
not.
sucks. Oklahoma State isn't that good. And yeah, it's the 3
Kansas
teams below
State
you.
is right. So like you do have an opportunity here. That was a
Yeah.
good point that you brought up. There is a stretch here where, I mean, you got Iowa State and Arizona in there too. Those are the other 2, right?
I think
So,
Arizona's good. I think like it's proven that Arizona's a better team than we are. But we can split with Arizona this year. Like I don't think that's I don't think that's crazy to think with how
yeah,
Arizona's played.
I maybe if you if you catch them on an off night for them and you catch an ASU team on a night in which they're actually competent offensively, then
Right.
maybe. But I'm looking at this schedule and there's already must wins. Like you can't lose to Kansas State, you can't lose to Oklahoma State, you can't lose to
No,
Colorado, you can't lose to
that's true.
Kansas State in Manhattan. You have Utah, you have another BYU, you have 2 Texas Tech left, right? Like this is a tough stretch. BYU just dismantled you. You just lost to
Well, yeah,
BYU
that's
by
a
20
month. Yeah, I
points.
mean that's a while from now. But
Right, but I mean, we can progress, but they can. You never know, right? And
yeah.
that's at home. BYU is quickly becoming the ire of ASU fans for good reason. But I don't know, man. You're looking at this schedule, and it's like you're picking out the wins, but you're also like they are gonna have to win some games that they aren't projected to win to have a puncher's chance at that 8-win mark. I think
Yeah, that's true.
that you
I guess
mentioned
the
that
thing
8
is
and
like
5.
I guess the thing is like with a lot of these teams that we've played, I haven't been like, "Oh, I'm so impressed with Cincinnati. I'm so impressed with UCF and
But that's what
Baylor."
makes it
Like,
worse.
no, I know, but it does
Like the
make it worse,
UCF
but it
game, that
also
UCF loss is bad. That UCF loss is bad, especially the way they
UCF
played down
isn't
the
like
stretch.
UCF isn't a
They're
they're
10
kind
and
of in the
6. They're
same
one,
boat
but
as
they're 1 and 4 in the conference, man. Their one win is against us. Or maybe that was when we played them. My bad. But in any case, that was a must
they
win
have
because
they
of
have 3 conference wins.
okay. So
Yeah.
3 and 4 in the
They're 3 and 4.
conference. The one I'm looking at just shows their
They're
conference
3 and
when
4
we
and 12
saw
and
them.
6. Like they're
No, I know, but what I'm saying is the scoreboard I'm looking at is showing their conference record when we played them, which was 1 and 4. They were 10 and 6, and ASU led by I want to say 4 or 5 points
No, I get
with
it. I
3
get that
minutes
that's a
left.
bad
I'm
loss. I'm
not
not
saying that
like
they're a bad team. I'm not saying like, oh, you have to beat UCF. But when you can steal games, especially with the stretch that you're going to have, and you have to go, you're right, you have to go around 8 and 5. And you look back at those UCF games where you're like, oh, we go instead of missing 4 straight free throws, if we hit 2 of those, we have another win in our pocket. And the margin for
yeah.
error in a really tough Big 12 is a little more I don't know what I'm looking for. You get what I'm saying though. You have a little more wiggle
Yeah,
room.
no,
So
I guess what I'm trying to get at is like I think we're about as good as basically every team in the Big 12. If you put like if you put like Arizona and Iowa State and Houston, like I think we're just as good as a lot of these teams in the middle of the Big 12.
mhm.
And this is kind of what we like expected. I just think that I think that some of these close game losses that we had will adjust as the season goes along, and because we're like I think we're as good as a lot of these mid tier teams. So like maybe they don't win enough games, and it's they miss out as in terms with Hurley.
Yeah.
My threshold, like if they really like, it's not even close to making the tournament. If they finish, like if they, let's say they finish the year, I don't know, they win 4 more games this year. So 15 and that would be what 15 and plus 15 and 16.
So there's
Yeah. Like,
13 left, right?
yeah. 13 left. You
Okay.
win 4 of the 13. So 9 plus,
Lose 9 more. Yep, 16.
15 and 16. Something like that where like it's not even close, then I'm fine getting rid of Hurley. Like, but if it's close and you're a team that could qualify for the NIT, whether they go or not, I wouldn't love to keep Hurley. But if keeping Hurley also means keeping Jaden Quaintance, then
Yeah.
I think you do it. I think you do it because like Jaden, like Quaintance is like he does crazy stuff in games. Like the fact that he already
At
has the ASU
17 years
blocks.
old, man.
Yeah, at 17 years old, he already has the ASU blocks in a season record for a freshman, and there's still 13 games to go plus the conference tournament. Like he's
Yeah.
scoring way better now. He's kind of cut out some of his shot selection that he's just not as good at. He's more focusing on the rim, and he'll take like an open 3 here and there. It's just he and he's a defensive game changer, man. Like this dude,
Yeah.
like this dude is incredible defensively. So like, and on the perimeter inside, he's got some things to work on, like free throw shooting and dribbling, but like he's a force on the floor. And so if they finish the year like 17 wins, 17, that'd be 17 to 14. You probably wouldn't make the tournament, but you also think like, okay, we bring back Quaintance, we bring back a few other guys, bring in the, 4-star Icelandic freshman guy that we're bringing in. I could be talked into this the 25-26 season being the last year because they being like Hurley staying on one more year because they have Quaintance,
Yeah.
So
I guess it all truly depends on what your realistic expectation of this program should be.
yeah,
Right.
that's true.
I think that's what it comes down to. And if ASU feels like the standard isn't being met for whatever they decide that is, then whatever. But I think you have to be realistic about what the ceiling for this program is.
Well, that is
And
true.
that's
I guess I
yeah.
would say like he's gonna have to make the tournament one of these years. You
Yeah.
can't just get like if he doesn't make the tournament this year,
But
he
that
would
should
have
be
to
the
make it next
ceiling.
year. What?
You're not going to be they said that should be the ceiling though. Like we're talking about be realistic about what this program should be.
Yeah,
It should be a team that is contending. It can be a team that's contending to make the field, right?
yeah,
Maybe
that's
you
true.
don't have national championship aspirations. Maybe you're not capable of reaching that level, but there's no reason why you shouldn't make the tournament.
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
mean,
So like, yeah,
you should be, yeah. So I think we're on the same page, and I
we
think
are. No, we are for sure.
that's a very realistic goal that this or I guess ceiling that this program could reach, right? And you could go beyond that. Maybe they go on a run. Who knows? College basketball is weird, but you have to get in to the field to be able to do that. And we're riding the roller coaster every season where okay, they have to do this down the stretch. They have to do the margin for error is always razor thin when we get to this point, it feels like. And I think that's a tough spot to be in year after year, right? You'd like a little more consistency. And that I think that's where they've struggled is they're consistently streaky. That's all that's been consistent.
Yeah, it's true. And you just hope that, like, the thing with Hurley's teams that's been true, and it's like sometimes when you're in the midst of the season, it's so up and down because they are so streaky. And then you just hope at the end of the year you get to like 20 wins, and you hope that like it all shakes out and it's like, okay, like we you know, this sounds dumb to say, but like we won enough games. But like it sometimes it doesn't feel like you're gonna shake out of whichever, you know, the highs or the lows, right? So like in the non-con, it felt like we were just gonna win a lot of these games until and then, you know, and then conference play starts, and then it felt like going to the West Virginia game felt like we weren't going to win games, and then now you beat West Virginia. It's like, oh, okay, you know, maybe who knows what could happen. So it's just like the, you know, the game to game reaction of the season. But Hurley's teams always kind of supercharge that, you know, so it doesn't feel like you can get established trends understood as the season goes along. All right, well, let's move on to football. I think we've squeezed everything out of this basketball conversation.
Yeah, good talk.
ASU added some transfers. It finished 7th in the AP poll today. Today being Wednesday, January 22nd. The Board of Regents officially approved Kenny Dillingham's 5-year contract extension that should pay him an average of $5.8 million per year. There's been a lot of things kind of, well, not happening, but I guess like some newsy things that have popped up. What kind of sticks out with you over the past, I don't know, week and a half of ASU
Couple
football
since
off the field?
yeah, the I guess the intro to the off season, so to speak. I think the big thing is
Right.
that cohesiveness that they're going to bring back next season, right? You retain Dillingham, you retain all of his coordinators, you retain all but a couple starters on both sides of the ball last year, and then you're adding some really solid pieces through the portal, right? And your recruiting class, you're kind of filling in the gaps and fine tuning your depth that way. I think one thing that obviously is going to scare a lot of, you know, fans who aren't familiar with the roster or aren't familiar with what they're doing to, you know, retool, so to speak, is the loss of Scadaboo, right? Like a lot of people are going to look at that as like, oh, Scadaboo's gone. And I mean, he's a legend after what he did. That's fair. But I think the big thing that has stood out to me is Kanye Udo coming in from Army, right? I think he's going to be a monster on this team. I also like the depth that they have at running back with Kyson Brown. He was really
They're
good.
loaded.
Yeah, they're loaded at running back, and they always are. ASU has been, I mean, you go down the list, right? Even X Valade in the days when ASU, we talk about the back-to-back 3 and 9 years, X Valade kind of got lost in that shuffle, but I mean, he was even great at running back, right? This is a really solid This is a solid program when it comes to developing running backs. So you've got Kyson Brown, Ray League Brown coming back after dealing with that injury this year. Jason Brown, right, the big time freshman they brought in from Seattle, is going to be another year older, right? So you add Kanye Udo to that mix, and I think they're gonna be good at running back. I think this is going to be a really solid running back room, and maybe you go with more of a, not saying there's not going to be a lead back in that bunch, but you know, you might be a little more apt to go with more of a committee, which gives different looks. Scatterbo was so good, you didn't really have to do that, right? He could just stay out on the field, puke and rally, and then throw a touchdown. You know what I'm saying? Like it's going to be kind of a different look, but that doesn't mean it's going to be less effective. Yeah. That doesn't mean it's going to be less effective. I really like the depth they have at running back. And then wide receiver was another concern for me because obviously you had a lot of guys, you know, leaving beyond Jordan Tyson. Obviously, Jordan Tyson is great. They're set there at their wide receiver 1 spot, but beyond him, right, you had Guillory leaving. You had who transferred out. I'm looking. Corbin Hendricks transferred out. Troy O'Meary transferred out, right?
Oh yeah.
Stovall graduated, right? He's out of eligibility. So you're looking at this list and you're like, okay, I'm pretty sure Malik McClain is coming back, right? They didn't burn his red shirt.
He's coming
He
back.
has
No,
one
yeah,
more.
he's coming back.
Okay. Okay. So you've got
Yeah.
Malik McClain, you've got Jordan Tyson. And then you look at who they're bringing in through the portal. The names jump out at you. Jalen Moss from Fresno State. You've got Jaron Hamilton from Alabama, right?
Yeah, I
I
really
want to
like
say there was one
Hamilton.
other guy. Oh, Noble Johnson was a big one from Clemson too.
Yep.
You go out and address one of the biggest needs on this team, which was kicker with Jesus Gomez, who probably played a role in kicking off the cycle
Yeah.
of events that led Dillingham here, right? So now he's
Yeah.
here. That's great. So I think the defense is going to look really good. I'm excited for the defense. The one place that I was kind of like, oh no, what's it going to look like with losing a lot of offensive depth? That was what I was a little concerned about. And then once you see what this staff has done in the portal and with their new recruiting class, you're like, okay, they're retooling. They are going to be all right at wide receiver, tight end too, right? You've got
Yeah.
blanking tight end. Why am I blanking? He's a monster.
Well, his name's Kamari Anderson, but no, I get your yeah.
No,
Colton, I
Shimon
told you.
Mateer. My bad.
Oh,
Shimon Mateer is who I was trying to mention. I completely blanked. You've got Shimon Mateer coming back, and then Jaden Fortier was another guy that was kind of people were excited about him coming into the season. Obviously, I think he got hurt or was rehabbing an injury, whatever. But at every position, the whole O line, 4 out of the 5 starters on the offensive line are coming back. I'm excited, man. It's that cohesion. Did I say cohesiveness earlier? I don't think that was right at all. That cohesion is what I was looking for across the board
yeah,
with the
absolutely.
staff.
No,
And
I totally
yeah,
agree.
and I
Yeah,
think
sorry, the internet
I'm
issues are hitting us. But
no, you're good. I was gonna look at the
what were you gonna say?
no, sorry, I was just gonna pull up the schedule too. I know this
Oh
schedule.
yeah, I mean, I haven't really looked too much at this. Well, because we don't know what order they're in yet.
Oh, you're
So
right. But we know who will
yeah,
play.
we know who will play.
Let's see. And
Yeah. Well,
again, these teams could look completely different. Obviously, nobody was afraid of ASU last year, so.
yeah, that's true.
But anyway, it doesn't really matter. This roster is good. I think the one guy, and I was excited to watch him last year when we were talking about this. I think the one guy that I'm looking forward to kind of watching develop in his role and watching him carve out whatever he's going to do in this offense is Rayleigh Brown. I thought he was solid at USC. And that was a big time get for us last year. And he dealt with the injury. So I'm excited to see him come back.
Oh yeah, so excited.
And be kind of a weapon for them. Like, I don't know, running back, wide receiver. Yeah, I think he's going to have some versatility. So that'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. What I would have to say is with a lot of these transfer guys, we mentioned them already on previous shows, but I think what's so important about the players that we've brought in, especially in January in this kind of recent window, is you're adding to the wide receiver room by getting Jaron Hamilton, a former 4-star recruit at Alabama. You already bring in Moss and Johnson, so now you expect Moss to be solid. I just looked up his numbers. He had 560 yards, 4 touchdowns last year at Fresno State. Had 97 yards against Michigan, which is a very encouraging sign because you're playing against very good defensive backs. So you expect with him, you kind of know what you're going to get. A good complementary receiver to Tyson. And then if even one of Johnson or Hamilton pops, because they're trained, like who knows how good they're going to be, right? But then by getting Hamilton, you're not as reliant on Johnson or vice versa. So I like that. And then I like getting the 2 Purdue defensive backs. Nyland Green was a former 5-star. He
Oh
was at
yeah,
Georgia. And then Kindrich Breedlove, he had 3 picks for Purdue last year. Now, Breedlove he's
did
one of
he
those guys who's
officially?
bounced around a ton of teams. And there was a story that he visited Tennessee after committing. So we don't know about him, but even if he does, the thing is, even if he doesn't come, you still have Green, you still have Adrian Wilson. I like getting the offensive lineman Jameto Ogbigbo from Texas State. Ruggiero is a bit more of a development guy. And what's good about getting, obviously, I mean, we talked about Gomez, enormous, and Udo, big pickup. But Obigbo, he could be your 5th starter on the O-line,
Yeah.
And so you're just kind of beefing up all these positions that a lot of times you were already pretty strong in. And now you just go into this year and there aren't any huge question marks. There really isn't.
For sure.
You at least have solid groups everywhere, and that's a really good place to be. So
yeah, we're looking at a team that
will. It'll be interesting if
Sorry, I think we're on a delay.
One more coach that leaves. I was thinking about this if Dion. Oh, yeah.
No, you're good.
No,
you're good because okay.
Yeah. Anyway, I was saying if Dion does take the Cowboys job, which it doesn't look like that'll happen now, but if for whatever reason some coach leaves this offseason later than expected, then that opens, another portal window for all those players. So would we add in that case? But I guess that's just a hypothetical.
Yeah. I think.
But anyway,
I think the big thing.
Honest.
Sorry, there's definitely a delay, but we're good. There's definitely a delay, but we're good. I think we talked about the receivers a little bit. One issue that ASU had last year was nobody else was really utilized very much in the passing game beyond Jordan Tyson, right? I mean, Guillory was kind of a big play threat with 15.4 yards per catch, obviously 61 long, but he only had 22 catches for 339 yards on the season, right? Shimon Mateer was after him. Cam Scatabo was their second leading receiver at 605 yards, right? So you hope out of the depth that we kind of talked about with Jalen Moss and the Alabama guy who I'm pulling up right now. I have the list right here and I can't find it. With Noble Johnson, Jalen Moss, and Jaron Hamilton. There we go. With those 3 guys, you kind of hit the nail on the head. You hope one of them sticks as an effective wide receiver too, because that's why everybody was so nervous going into the Big 12 championship was, okay, who's going to fill in for Jordan Tyson, right? Because nobody had proven to be that reliable second option. Nobody took it and ran with it. You can't look at a guy with 339 yards. And now they stepped up. I don't want to say that they make it sound like that. I didn't think they stepped up when they needed to. So maybe it's just a product of the offense. But if you have that reliable second target out of that trio we just talked about, or maybe it's Malik McClain, right? Whoever steps up and fills that wide receiver 2 role, that's just going to put more pressure on defenses. So and in the case that one of them goes down, you're not sitting there panicking that, oh, a guy with 339 receiving yards on the season is our wide receiver 1. What's going to happen? So that's a big.
No,
I think that's big.
Dude, yeah, I'm not worried about that this upcoming year. I think that
and Levitt, that's what I'm saying. That's huge.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean that's what I mentioned earlier. Just it feels like there's just solid depth at all these positions, and there's multiple contributors, and it's just there's a reason why we're in the 13, 15, 11 in all these way too early articles that are coming out, right? ASU
You're looking at a team that might
one
be
of the teams that's being talked about entering the year. Oh yeah, no, for sure. And entering the year, and I think that's kind of where you want to be. I don't want them to be top 10 entering the year because I want them to still have some something to prove, And I think this team will handle success well. I just think that like when you have Levitt as your leader, when you have Dillingham as your leader, and all the guys on defense, when you have a Xavier Alford as your leader, like I don't think there's going to be too much let up. And you also have like Jordan Tyson wanting to come back and prove himself. Not that he has to prove himself, but like contribute after not being
Build on it,
healthy in the
right?
most two biggest games of the year. So
Yeah.
yeah, and speaking of rankings, even though Colton, you mentioned how much you were excited about the transfer portal stuff. This is this is kind of shallow, but like I'm honestly just very excited that ASU finished ranked 7th in the AP
Yeah.
poll. Like
Look at that,
finishing
ahead of Boise State.
top
It's about
10 in the
time.
AP poll is yeah. Yeah, no kidding. Oh my gosh.
Look at how it
They
shook
didn't even
out.
drop.
Whoa. You mean
I guess we
ASU?
rose,
ASU jumps
lost.
Boise State? Really?
I know.
Wow.
Suck it, Broncos.
It's almost like ASU
But
was a
like
better team all
we were the
season.
best. Yeah, dude. If Notre Dame had gotten blown out last night and it looked like they were going to, but to their credit, if you're looking for an
Battled a
apartment,
little
go
bit.
to apartments.com.
Yeah.
Uh,
They didn't pay
yeah.
us for that. That's
No, Notre Dame battled. I mean, they made it an 8-point game late. So I was going to make a bigger deal of like, hey, if ASU got the 3 seed, we might have been playing. We might have been playing on Monday night because there was no way ASU was ever beating Ohio State this year. And I do think Texas is the second best team in the country. And we played well enough. We played them even, basically.
yeah.
But I don't look at Notre Dame and be like, oh, we're better than them. I'm like, no, they earned
They
their
had a
trip
great
to the
run.
championship
They had a
game
great
fair
run.
and
Yeah, you
square, and
can't take
they made
anything
Ohio
from what
State
they did.
sweat a little bit. So anyway, but it is cool to be the highest ranked of the non blue blood teams. Like all of these teams ahead are, made men of college football, so to speak. And even though Oregon doesn't have a national championship, like they're functionally a blue blood. They're a power. ASU is the highest of all the non Big Ten SEC teams. Or I guess that's not true with Notre Dame, but highest of the non-powers is what I would say. And so that there's an accomplishment in that, especially when you were predicted to just be not very good and you come out of nowhere. So I don't know, like kind of finishing the year 7th in the AP poll. There's no team that like all the teams above us. I can't really argue that we should be above. Maybe
Yeah.
Georgia, but Georgia won the SEC and beat Texas twice. So like I can't.
There
I
is
can't.
a beautiful sense of vindication that comes with
Yeah.
seeing ASU above Boise State. I'm going to continue to hang on that.
It's funny. I didn't go into this thinking about us being ranked above Boise State, but it is nice.
All bowl season was just discourse on why Boise State should have been the 3 over. And if we don't get that Clemson win over SMU, ASU doesn't have a bye.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I
and
know.
Now at the end, when the chips have fallen,
we would have been at Penn State.
ASU is ranked. And look at that. I maybe there's nothing to be said about this. Can you go up a little bit and look at the top 6? Look at those numbers. I guess the 2 through 5, they're pretty tight in terms of like the ranges between the numbers, because I was looking at the range for go down to ASU now.
ASU's 100 behind Georgia.
Right, but like look how far ahead they are of like a Boise State or
no, they're very much
not close.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it wasn't close.
And by the
So
way,
again,
it looked like that.
more
That is
vindication.
reflective of what happened on the field.
100%. And we said that from the beginning. Like I think I was banging the ASU's better than Boise State drum, maybe a little too hard. I was incensed
Well,
by
yeah,
how the rankings shook out, right? Boise
right.
State, great year, whatever. They actually played Penn State somewhat tight in that Fiesta Bowl. But this is just, again, vindicating for me to see that the final votes had ASU ahead of Boise State by a somewhat significant margin when they both played. They both only played one round, right?
Yeah.
So vindicated.
Congratulations. And no, but
Thank you,
like
Mark.
as we wrap this part up, like it's just cool that we're ranked in the top 10 to end the year, you know? Like that's
Yeah,
it's such a stamp of
crazy.
approval of this run by Dillingham, and it's really good for the guys to see. I mean, this hasn't happened since the 96 team, right? Like we've had teams that have finished in the top like 15, right? Like I think the 2013-14 teams were like that. 07 team was like that, and I think the 2004 team was like that as well. But they were it's like that would be like if we had the year, uh, if we had the year like Illinois, right?
Yeah,
Like Illinois had a good
or
year
Iowa
this year. They went
State.
9-3. Yeah, Ohio State, yeah, they went nine and
No,
three, won a
I
bowl
said
game.
Iowa State.
Oh, Iowa State, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
or Iowa State too. Yeah, that's true. Iowa State,
yeah,
Illinois, just kind of you had a good year. You know, we would still be really happy. Like but not as happy, but
yeah.
they
No,
won a
it's
big bowl game.
we're effectively, like, if you look at the gap, we're effectively like the best of the rest, right? Like
Yes, exactly,
that's kind of what it is.
and
So
that's a great place to be. And if I don't know how happy we'll be next year if we are the best of the rest and we don't want to like.
yeah,
I think with all these guys coming back, I think the goal is to at least win a playoff game. I think that's the
hmm
goal. That doesn't mean if you don't reach that, like it's a failure. Like if they win the Big 12 and don't win a playoff game, that's still going to be good in the grand scheme of
yeah,
things. Even if they like go 10-2 and don't win the Big 12, but I don't want to get into all that right now. But like
yeah. No, I
you
agree with
just
you though.
accomplished a lot, and this is a good place to
With
be.
with success, like, the expectations become greater,
They rise.
right?
Yes.
They rise, and this team seems built to do that. But a lot of people are talking about. I've heard the phrase "house money" entirely too much this week, and I'm sure you can infer why I may have heard that. But that's what this season felt like for ASU. It was, you're playing with house money, you're defying every
Yeah.
expectation, pick to finish last, shock the world, all of that. Now the approach shifts a little bit, and maybe it doesn't shift in the locker room, maybe it doesn't shift in the way that they handle their business, which would be great, but your outward perception evolves, right?
Right.
It comes back to that whole hunter versus hunted thing. And I don't always like making the NFL examples, and I truly think that the Lions are a terrible example of the hunter versus the hunted thing. Um, but
I get
like
you. Yeah.
that, you get what I'm saying? Like that completely changes the approach, right?
Yeah.
And maybe they'll still, and I think I talked about it on the last episode, but it can evolve from, shock the world to, like, go back and take what was ours, because that Peach Bowl was theirs. It felt like, and we've talked about that. I finally
Yeah.
cooled off a little bit about the assault that wasn't called, but um now you use that, you build on that, you have your foundation, and that was the goal, right? Activate the valley, build the foundation, all that stuff. You have to build on a foundation. You can't sell a foundation. There has to be a house on it.
Yeah.
Maybe you can. I
For
don't know, but
sure.
it's a lot more appealing when there's a house built on the foundation.
Better than just
There
a
you go.
slab of concrete. I agree. Yeah. So, I mean, like we've said, just a good year. And um, I had one more point that I was going to make, but it is
I talk
escaping.
too much, huh?
Yeah.
This is your show, man. You
Yapping
can just
Colton.
mute me. You
No.
can just mute me.
um, oh, this is what I was going to say. You mentioned house money, right? Like that phrase was thrown about a bunch this year about ASU, and deservedly so.
Yeah.
I I don't like. I'm glad we're going into this year and ASU isn't the underdog anymore.
Mhm.
Like ASU doesn't need to be the underdog. Like it probably shouldn't be the underdog in all seriousness. Like with just how big of a school it is, it's not like it would like in the Pac-12. It was an underdog depending on who they played, but it wasn't always the underdog. It just depended on the season, depended on who they were playing. Like if they were at Oregon, yeah, they were the underdog. If they were hosting Cal, then they weren't the underdog, because they were just kind of a mid-level team in the Pac-12. And anyway, like I'm looking forward to that element of it. Like, how's ASU going to handle? They're going to be top 3 picked in the Big 12 this year. There's going to be buzz around Levitt and Tyson, no matter what. Like Tyson is regarded universally around college football as an awesome receiver. Like,
Yeah.
so, and there won't be people like expecting them to suck this year. There's going to be the expectations will come. So that adjusting to being like, oh, we're not the plucky underdog anymore. We're just supposed to be good. Like that is a real thing. And I'm glad that ASU is at this point. I don't want being the underdog for ASU means that you've effed up in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It's like during the playoffs, like I didn't like being compared to Indiana because Indiana is
Yeah.
like this was their first 10-win season ever. It's not this like ASU had more drama recently, and like no, for this particular year in 2024, people weren't expecting much, but over the course of time, Indiana and ASU aren't comparable programs, and so I'm glad we're just out of this. Like this year, this final ranking at 7, going to the Peach Bowl, winning the Big 12, all of this, it's just kind of a period punctuation mark on we are no longer this fledgling program that is, totally irrelevant anymore. We are at least in the mix for the first foreseeable future with Dillingham. So, and this was the start of it. So
Totally.
that's good. Speaking of being in the mix, we will wrap this up with some talk about ASU hockey, who went on the road to St. Cloud, won a 2-game series a week after splitting at home against North Dakota. Hi, I'm back. I believe that internet crashed. Super fun. Colton says he is still on the call. I think we're just going to end this now. We wanted to shout out hockey to end it. Just wanted to mention that they are 11th in the USCHO Division I men's poll. Good shape to win the NCHC in their first year, 13-8-1 team to be. And yeah, thank you for watching and listening. Please like and subscribe, rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. Follow the College Huddle. And as always, go Sun Devils.